Well, I am that kind of conservative. The kind of conservative who doesn't pretend that his gun closet is full of hunting tools. Yes, the AR-15 is a watered-down weapon of war. That's why I own them.
Every time who I am, how damn, I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I
Welcome back to Revved Up with Ram Thorburn. After a 2-year absence, it's great to be back making content again for the Revved Up Rebel Nation. I got a feeling we might be a little all over the place today because it's been a while and I'm about as rusty as Corn Pop's fabled Switchblade.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
But we're going to have a lot of fun here. Might get a little bit rowdy here, might get a little bit deeper there. Before we get going, I want to remind everybody to like, share, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to find me on Rumble and X at Ram Thorburn, because I have no idea how long it's going to be until I'm digitally Franz Ferdinanded by YouTube once again. I want to kick off my return here with a sort of State of the Union speech. And it's not good, ladies and gentlemen. The American way of life is deteriorating faster than Joe Biden's mental faculties at sunset. And that's an astonishingly low baseline to begin with. America no longer feels like the land of the free and the home of the brave. The communist takeover is all but complete. We've hit a critical mass where even the truly uninitiated can tell that something isn't right, that the ship is no longer on course, that their slumber is no longer accompanied by an American dream. The usurpation of power and influence that marked the communists' long march through the institutions is no longer gradual. It's sudden, jarring, violent. Social ethos that were norms less than a decade ago are now scarlet letters pinned to the bloody chests of regular everyday people, branding them with whatever type of ist or phobe their new order transgressions relegate them to. The weak crawl back on hands and knees groveling for forgiveness with manufactured public apologies prescripted by some sad, lonely woman who got duped into believing that the path to happiness was a cubicle in a PR firm, as if forgiveness was ever in the offering from these communist rabid hyenas. It's struggle session season in America, and no one gets to sit this one out. Of course, once spotted by the all-seeing eye of Stalinist Sauron, no path to redemption lies before you. The whole of your humanity gets reduced to a cautionary tale to any who may dare to challenge the unrelenting political orthodoxy of the day. Well, challenge accepted, motherfuckers. Initially, when I set out to undertake this Ram Thorburn State of the Union address, my intention was to lay bare the concrete illustrations of corrosion and decay in the infrastructure of the American political order. But as I charted out the flow of this address, I found myself uninspired by the direction it was going. At this point, the corruption of our establishment and the devolution of our leaders into overlords felt redundant and dated. We're well past the point of exposition. It's baked into the cake. Everyone knows about Joe Biden selling foreign policy objectives to foreign oligarchs. Everyone knows that the Communist Party, aka the Democrats, have implemented a multi-tiered, ideologically based justice system. That Lady Justice has been unmasked, her blindfold shredded by the sharp blades of tyranny. We know that many of the people we have entrusted to guide the ship, to craft just law and inspire us through art and academy, have been wholly captured and entrapped by a black ops intelligence blackmail scheme that exploits the most vulnerable among us, our children. We all know that the American sphere of influence is irredeemably propped up by a systematic pedophile exploitation ring that has been deemed too big to fail. But despite the revelations, the wickedness of this order casts such a dense shadow over the American spirit that disinfectant sunlight can't seem to pull us out of the darkness. So as I sat down to craft this address, I asked God to guide me in a direction of purpose. And within minutes it dawned on me. I was seeking to address the symptoms and not the disease. America is rapidly deteriorating from a blessed land of freedom and opportunity into a dystopian fascisto-communist hellscape because our core has melted. Our value system eroded, and our sense of purpose inverted. The pursuit of justice, integrity, and the American way is a metaphysical inspiration, an intangible light within us. But communist ideology is devoid of these metaphysical inspirations, and is concerned only with the material. As Vladimir Lenin stated, atheism is a natural and inseparable part of Marxism, of the theory and practice of scientific socialism. Our program necessarily includes the propaganda of atheism. It is a particularly revealing quote when you put into perspective its influence on a modern American culture. We're told to trust the science. that which cannot be seen or confirmed through strictly empirical processes of the scientific method need not be heeded as relevant. And thus the religion of scientific big S trademark symbol has supplanted traditional religion and concepts of a higher power, which people sought for enlightenment beyond the material world and beyond the self. These pursuits illuminated for us the concepts of purpose, virtue, compassion, and justice. They energized and elevated the human spirit and motivated us to conquer awe-inspiring achievements in art, literature, philosophy, and architecture. But these rigid parameters of scientific materialism do nothing but constrict our understanding of humanity by eliminating the intangibles and marginalizing anything that cannot be physically observed, statistically analyzed, or voraciously consumed. It replaces high-minded concepts like virtue, prudence, and justice with animalistic impulses like greed, gluttony, and self-interest. This cultural shift from the metaphysical to the physical is commensurate to a spiritual genocide, so it's only natural that a coarsening and corrosion of our public order would follow. But the fascisto-communists of the political left cannot be concerned with purpose-driven salvation of the human soul, because they disavow any notion that the soul exists. The Marxist doctrine dictates that people are nothing more than animated meat sacks, composites of raw material, no different from a scrap of metal, save for the arbitrary happenstance of molecular interactivity, or something. These people are fucking retarded. It symbolizes an irrevocably bleak outlook that, whittled down to its logical conclusions, relegates those without power to a life of hopelessness, destitution, and despair, and coronates those with power as demigods among men, no matter how openly depraved and scandalous they may be. We're looking at you, Hunter Biden, and Hollywood, except Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, and the media. God, the Democrat Party really is just a who's who of American scumbags, aren't they? But if we're gonna stand any chance against the left's dark, brutal vision for America, we gotta wake the fuck up. We must channel the spirit of Barry Goldwater when he famously stated that extremism in defense of liberty is no vice. No longer can we suffer the insufferable parade of weak-willed, shriveled-dick National Review token conservatives clamoring for their 3-minute guest spot on some mainstream agitprop estrogen fest, desperate to prove that they're not that kind of conservative. I got a couple F words for those guys. Well, I am that kind of conservative. The kind of conservative who doesn't tolerate registered sex offenders dressed as demonic streetwalkers telling little kids it ain't gonna lick itself. The kind of conservative who doesn't pretend that his gun closet is full of hunting tools. Yes, the AR-15 is a watered-down weapon of war. That's why I own them. The type of conservative who isn't gonna get caught on his heels when the left wants to play their manipulative language games. The kind of conservative who isn't going to apologize for or hesitate to impose my will to defeat those who seek to destroy my way of life. You know, I tried to make this more eloquent, high-minded return video. As Leon Trotsky said, revolutions are always verbose, and if we're going to 1776 this motherfucker, I figured I'd take a page from their book. But y'all done fucked around and got Ram revved up again. So here we go. The days of principled stands for limited government and anti-authoritarianism, whatever the fuck that means anymore, and laissez-faire, live and let live cultural acceptance are over. We've had enough. Enough of the libertarian bullshit that did nothing but stand idly by as communists raided and captured our homeland. We tried that shit and we got utterly stampeded for it. Not a mas. What the left intrinsically understands about politics that the right doesn't is that politics is fundamentally about doing favors for your friends and punishing your enemies. That's it. Simple as that. And the left has no problem punishing conservatives. They revel in it. It's sport to them. The right, on the other hand, will watch the left engage in blatant corruption, then do nothing but complain lest their fellow libertarians dogpile them for violating some abstract, incoherent non-aggression principle. Oh, it's better that the communists be allowed to seize the reins and open the gulags than for any of us to infringe upon their rights to do so. Why, if we intervened to stop them, we'd be no different than they are. Shut the fuck up. Daddy's home, and I'm sending you kids to time out. Somebody make Daddy a sandwich. How many conservatives can you name that have been utterly wrecked by the left? Gavin McInnes, Alex Jones, Gina Carano, Enrique Tarrio, Joe Biggs, Stuart Rhodes, Jacob Chansley, Ashley Babbitt, MAGA Meemaws touring the Capitol on January 6th. Hell, even an Alaskan woman who looked like a MAGA Meemaw touring the Capitol on January 6th. Now, how many leftists can you think of that have been utterly steamrolled and stampeded by the right? Anyone? That's what I thought. A just society believes in good and rejects evil. But if good is too weak and cowardly to draw a sword against evil, is it really even good? The only people worse than communists are cowards, and the American right is utterly infested with spineless, yellow-bellied jellyfish. Now, I'm not saying that ideas and principles don't matter. They absolutely do. I think I made that abundantly clear in the earlier portion of this video. But ideas are impotent without will, and ideas that castrate a man's will are fucking bad ideas. The left isn't fighting a battle of ideas. They don't care about ideas. They care about power. The left fundamentally understands that politics operates on a bet that in a battle of wills, conservative opposition will cower and fold under pressure, as conservative opposition has always cowered and folded under pressure. But now things have gotten dire, and the history books will reflect on this moment in the great American experiment as one mired in a second civil war. Some may chalk up the struggles of the day to what's called the fourth turning or the Strauss-Howe effect, which denotes a recurring, cyclical social phenomenon of rebirth, growth, decay, and crisis. It's often explained in the concise idea that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. But I don't believe that paints an adequate picture for what we're up against, as I believe that our rapacious overlords seek to supplant the cyclical nature of power and culture with a more permanent handicapping of anyone that dare pry from them the cudgel of power that they cling to with a white-knuckle death grip. And given that the halls of power look less like our nation's capital and more like the geriatric wing of an assisted living facility, I use the term death grip quite literally. I do not believe that our second civil war is merely a cyclical struggle over whether to choose to be, say, a Catholic or Protestant nation or anything to that effect. Something so nominal would not mandate the utter divorce of perception from reality that has become the hallmark of our establishment's acolytes. Ironically, and unwittingly, the atheists of the American left might be the most fervent brand of religious zealotry our country has to offer.
I will use my voice in the most uplifting way possible.
What we face today is dire, existential, biblical. We cannot afford to lose this fight. On September 17, 1787, as delegates left the Constitutional Convention at Independence Hall, Benjamin Franklin was asked, "What kind of government do we have?" And Franklin replied curtly, "A republic if you can keep it." The truth is, we have already lost our republic. As the American people slobbered over Hollywood starlets and gorged themselves on Twinkies and Bud Light, the United States of America was surreptitiously supplanted by the global American empire. The American people were transformed and reduced from a dignified citizenry into merely tax chattel funding overseas adventures that furthered nothing more than corporate interests and greased the wheels for politicians to enrich themselves at the expense of their constituents. Just compare the amount of money sent to Ukraine versus the amount of money sent to Hawaiians reeling from the Maui wildfires to clear up any misconceptions about where you stand in the eyes of our government. Want to save up money for a house? Fuck you. We're going to tax you at every turn, then send you to Afghanistan to guard poppy fields so we can fund our off-the-book CIA black ops with opiates that your kid brother's going to love to death. Literally. And who needs opposition when everyone in Washington can get in on the take? And thus the mirage of the two-party system remains, as both Republicans and Democrats join powers to form the supreme uniparty, where the public can bicker over inconsequential petty issues, never the wiser that it doesn't matter which party you vote for, because the windfalls only go one way. Their way. And this is where the fascisto-communist war against the American people escalates. Enter populism. With our economy being offshored and American workers being displaced in favor of foreign slave labor, hey, we would never revert back to slavery in America, but we'll sure as shit incentivize it abroad. The value of our dollar diminishing as money printers go burr, and the culture as bankrupt as our wallets, the American people had had enough. That brings us to 2016, when a famous and charismatic American icon bundled up Americans' frustrations, put them on his back, and became the first president in decades that was truly elected and not selected. In the eyes of the establishment, it was the ultimate betrayal. An uprising of the hoi polloi against their benevolent masters. It couldn't stand. We had to be punished. You see, the mirage two-party uniparty system was manageable. It was controllable. You start with an agenda. You present a crisis. One party takes a predetermined position, the thesis. The other party takes another predetermined position, the antithesis. Neither solution is actually designed to solve the problem, and it doesn't matter which solution wins out because the synthesis moves the goalposts closer to the agenda of the ruling class either way. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, and it's the brainchild of Karl Marx's philosophical predecessor, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. You gotta be a real asshole to go by 4 names, don't you? But the Hegelian dialectic allowed the political ruling class to divide the American people into 2 camps, with little to no overlap, leaving us to duke it out with each other while they joined forces, selling us off for scraps. But a man named Donald Trump did what no other American with means was willing to do. He called it out, and he took up the mantle for everyday Americans. All of a sudden, urban socialist Bernie Sanders supporters and rural conservative Christians alike were both pulling the lever for a man who truly offered a different path for the American people. Not only did the emergence of Trump and his populist brand of politics offer a completely different political order, it exposed and laid bare the neocon, neo-lib uniparty for their treachery and treasonous betrayal of the American people, who they had sworn an oath to protect. The game was up, and a lot of people were in a lot of trouble. Politically, Donald Trump represented an abandonment of the global American empire and a return to the glory of the American nation. And the establishment responded with a declaration of war. Endless fake scandals, hoaxes, lies, and now an alarming parade of petty trumped-up indictments concocted by the very people who screeched for years that Trump had made us into a banana republic. Excising political power in the name of democracy. Will of the people be damned. The Second Civil War is a war of lies versus the truth, of religion versus the cult, of empire versus the nation. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu stated that if you know your enemies and you know yourself, you will never be imperiled in 100 battles. If you do not know your enemies nor yourself, you will be imperiled in every battle. The good news for us is that the left does not know their enemy. They have been so reliant for so long on dishonest manipulations that they no longer have any concept of who we are or what we actually believe. And furthermore, they don't know themselves, because how could they? They're acolytes of an ideology so incoherent it can't even acknowledge the fundamental premises of human existence. Their ideology isn't designed to inform a wise, just, and honorable worldview in pursuit of human flourishing. It's designed to amass raw power by any means necessary. And when your entire worldview is comprised of nothing but double standards and arbitrary belief structures, it's hard enough to understand that you're a human being at all, let alone who you are as a human being. You reduce yourself to one of those wacky inflatable flailing arm men, and that's really all the left is at this point, flailing in whatever direction the commie wind blows them. That leaves them incredibly vulnerable, because we do know who we are, and we know who they are too. We know them for their greed, their avarice, their malice. We know them for their crimes against men, women, and children, both in America and abroad. We know them for their vile lies they spew and the vitriolic hate in their hearts, for the abject corruption of their souls. Our enemies are strong, they are ferocious, and they are unapologetically cruel, but they are not the foreign despot boogeymen our mockingbird media would have you believe them to be. They're not Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, or Xi Jinping. Adversarial as they may be, the true enemy resides within our border, casting a long, tumultuous shadow over the very people that have entrusted them to look out for our interests at home and abroad. They are the subversive personification of evil, the slithering serpents who whisper enticing promises into our ears, then betray us for their own ambitious ends. Their tentacles are wrapped tightly around the pillars of our institutions, infecting our youth's mind, strangulating our prosperity, and punishing our dissent. They want us to feel hopeless, like the odds are ever stacked against us, but our war against them is anything but a hopeless endeavor. For while their raw institutional power is real, their need to incessantly lie, cheat, and steal reveals cracks in their foundation and weaknesses that our strength in numbers can exploit. We must come together and rally behind President Donald J. Trump, not as our savior or as a great American hero, though I'd maybe argue that he is, but as the avatar for the American populace that is sick and tired of being sick and tired. Trump has said many times that they are not coming after him, that they're coming after us, and that he's just in the way. There's a lot of truth to that. The entrenched, corrupt establishment believes that by taking out Trump, they'll be cutting off the head of the populist snake, leaving us to die on the vine. In the 8 years since Trump descended the golden escalator, he has faced unrelenting assault from the demons that seek to destroy our just way of life, and despite the constant barrage of slings and arrows, the Donald has never turned his back on us. Loyalty is a virtue that Trump has in spades, and it's only right that we circle the wagons around our commander-in-chief and ride into battle with him against the destructive forces of the communist left. While no one in America wants another bloody and violent civil war, we absolutely cannot submit to the forces of Moloch or whatever evil entity is guiding our ruling class. But we cannot bend and we cannot break. If they continue down this path of political and religious persecution and continue to back good, hardworking Americans into a corner, they will leave us with no option. And war it will be.
Every time who I